Hello, thank you for coming tonight. My name is Bilge Ibiri. I'm a film critic, and I wanted to introduce our guests tonight. First, we have the great director Jacques Audiard. And then we have the co-writer of the film, Thomas Bidegain.
Merci. Merci.
And of course, we have one of our stars, Jake Gyllenhaal.
I like this. It's really fantastic, this line.
Yeah, this is just, you guys are sheathed in darkness right now, so we're assuming there's an audience out here. So I guess I'll start with the director first. Jacques, this is your first film in English.
No.
No.
Ah, sorry. Yes.
So how did you come across this project?
Enfin, il faut que je remonte à toute l'histoire.
Okay, I will translate.
You want all the story?
The whole story.
The whole story, yeah, go ahead.
So, il y a très longtemps, il y a 6 ans.
A long time ago, 6 years ago,
John C. Reilly et Alison Dickey,
John C. Reilly and Alison Dickey, his
m'ont
wife,
amené un roman.
Brought a book to us.
The Sister Brothers de
The
Patrick
Sisters
DeWitt.
Brothers by Patrick DeWitt.
Et je l'ai lu.
I read it.
Et vous savez quoi?
And you know what?
Ça a fait un film.
I made a film out of it.
Mais non, la chose un peu étrange, c'est que c'est la première fois de ma vie que quelqu'un m'amène. Enfin, normalement, je choisis les livres.
The strange thing is, it's the first time. Normally, I choose the book, I choose everything.
With Tom.
We do that together.
Et c'est la première fois qu'on m'amène quelque chose que je vais faire.
But it's the first time somebody bring me something that I will turn into a film.
J'ai aimé l'expérience.
And I love that.
Did the fact that you were going to be making a film in English, did that change your working dynamic at all? Because Jacques and Thomas, you work a lot together.
Je n'ai aucune dynamique.
I have no dynamic. I'm sorry about that.
Je suis proche du lézard.
Yeah, I'm like a lizard.
A lizard, okay. Thomas, what about you?
Non, ça faisait longtemps que j'avais envie de travailler avec des actrices ou des acteurs américains.
No,
Ça a été l'occasion.
I wanted to work with American actors or actresses for,
Et donc
for
voilà,
a while.
ça s'est fait tout simplement comme ça. Il s'avère
it
qu'il
happened.
y a un petit moment, j'avais rencontré Jake, on
I
avait
met
envie de
with
travailler
Jake a while
ensemble.
ago. We wanted to work together.
Et ben voilà, ça s'est fait.
And there you go. There you have it.
Jake, I saw Jake, I saw an interview with you where you basically admitted that you harassed Jacques for years to give you a part.
You answer your own questions.
Sorry.
You're a ventriloquist.
I just
It's easier. It's easier.
It's very easy. Yes, yeah, I did. I mean, I've been, I've never said this to you in person, really, but he's probably my favorite director.
Go for a walk.
And so when I heard that he was adapting the book into a movie, I found his email, and I wrote him, and then he never wrote me back. And then I just stalked him for like a number of years. And then I was on the jury at Cannes when he won for Deepan. And
Yes, you worked for me.
yes. And then
Thank you.
nobody wanted that movie to win, but I gave my life to make sure that it did, just to get a part in this movie. No, and I met him there again, and then we met a couple of times, and then I got a random phone call that a few years later that he was offering me a role in the movie, and I didn't. Forgive me, I didn't even read the script. I just said yes. No, and then that was it.
What kind of preparation do you have to do for a part like this, though? I mean, you have incredible range. You've done a really wide range of films and parts. This is the kind of film. I mean, there's a historical context, but it's obviously, it's very irreverent. How authentic do you need to get it? You're working with this accent. Like, what are these, tools that you have to work with for something like this?
The luxury of working with someone like Jacques is that I think probably 70% of your work is done for you before you even show up. There's so much thought and so much choice that you're walking into a pretty much already finished canvas. So essentially, you just try not to fuck it up. And to me, Jacques and I, the biggest thing that we discussed really was that how do you communicate a character, his upbringing, his history in a shorter period of time with not a lot of explanation. And one of the reasons I think I deeply love their films and the films that they do together is that there's so much implication and there's so much room for the audience's mind to roam and to fill in themselves. And the elliptical nature of the way in which stories are told and that he loves to tell them allows for history to be filled in by the actor and then ultimately by the audience. So to me, we made this choice, and I did a couple of accents for Jacques, and he just immediately said, yeah, I like that. And then everything else was a discussion, and such incredible department heads. I mean, every single person. When I came on set, I had every prop was laid out for me of different choices, 4 different choices of, every single possible thing that my character had. And then I slowly picked, like I bought my blanket, and we all did. I bought my gun, and I made those choices, and he had already sort of vetted them. So it was a slow process, but it was pretty much already there for me. And that is why I think he's amazing. I mean, I don't have very good taste, but...
Well, I mean, even though the film is a Western, it feels very relevant to today. I mean, speaking to issues of immigration, diversity, masculinity, race. Were these ideas in the novel? I mean, from everything I've heard from you guys talking about the film, it seems like there was always discussion involved. It was very a process, a very organic process. How much of these themes were there in the beginning, and how much of it did you kind of develop as you made the film?
Je pense que beaucoup de choses étaient dans le livre.
A lot of it was in the book.
Et plus que tout, peut-être le ton si original de Patrick DeWitt.
Yeah, and Patrick DeWitt, very peculiar tone.
Après, nous, Tom et moi, on a développé, c'est vrai, les personnages de Worm et de Maurice.
We developed Worm and Maurice's character a lot because
qui fournissent au film, enfin aux personnages en tout cas de Charlie et Eli, comme une espèce d'horizon intellectuel.
Because it gives the brothers an horizon, something to look forward.
Voilà, c'était ça, mais c'était comment moi je pense que on a sans doute trahi un peu DeWitt.
Yeah, of course we didn't respect completely DeWitt's book.
Parce que c'est dans notre nature.
Because it's in our nature. But
mais je pense qu'on a quand même on a été fidèle à l'esprit du livre.
Yeah, faithful to the spirit of the book. And there's something that there are a few things that are not in the book, and that came, of course, Worm and Maurice's character, but also the idea of that utopia that Worm has. So that makes some kind of a difference, because if you take up that gives us another level to the story. If you take out the utopia, all the characters will talk about is money. They will talk about gold. Here, the greed. Here, they talk about an ID. So it's actually the story of 2 guys chasing one guy who's chasing an ID. So it's a different way of looking at the film.
And it's interesting because the film presents kind of this spectrum of masculinity, but you have this one character on one edge who's looking off into utopia, and then you have this other character played by Joaquin Phoenix who's kind of in hell, really. And you have this progression really because John C. Reilly's character obviously is much more sensitive, and then Jake's character is kind of this like humanist. That seems like was that something that was in the book as well, or was that something that you kind of brought further along?
Non, je pense que ce qui était vraiment dans le livre, c'était les 2 frères. Après, je crois que comment on a vraiment trouvé d'une certaine façon les personnages de Worm et de Maurice qui étaient beaucoup plus caricaturaux dans le
Worm and Maurice's character are more caricatural in the book. So we really worked on them and developed them a lot.
Et je sais gré à Jake d'avoir accepté que même durant le tournage, on fasse évoluer les choses.
Yes. And I really acknowledge that Jake really, even during production, we would write a lot and give new lines and voiceovers and many things that were not in the original screenplay.
C'était franchement vachement bien, j'ai bien aimé.
And I love that.
En fait, les films, il faudrait pas les écrire avant, il faudrait les écrire pendant.
Movies should not be written beforehand. It should be written on set.
Silence.
Silence.
Well, I mean, but does one of the things that people always say is that in other countries, very often you have a bit more of that luxury to be able to do that. In the U.S., it's much more of a kind of regimented process. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, I forgot the Angelica and the train.
Oh yeah, this is the Angelica special. It's great.
Yeah.
It's part of the.
C'est fou, ça. Vous acceptez d'être dans une salle avec le métro qui passe
It's
dedans?
crazy. You guys accept the train like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not period. Well, it is period, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, the film is very irreverent in style and tone, and very funny, but it never feels particularly contrived. You know, everything is, the humor, irony, it's all very organic. And I'm curious. I mean, we talked about this a little bit about this before, but the idea of trying to bring this irony, this irreverence out of something that is actually in many ways very authentic, much more authentic, I think, than like a Clint Eastwood Western might be.
Mais ça dépend quel film de Clint Eastwood, pardon.
Which Clint Eastwood film are you referring to?
I think this is much more authentic than, say, High Plains Drifter or Fistful of Dollars, or not Unforgiven, of course. It's kind of.
Mais comment, parce que je pense que je sais pas, je penserais pas à Eastwood, je penserais plutôt à Tarantino. Il n'y a pas de l'ironie, le cynisme ne m'intéresse pas beaucoup.
I'm not really interested by cynicism and irony.
On fait pas l'idée de faire un film contre ou de faire le malin. Je suis pas malin.
I'm not smart. I'm not that smart. I don't want to
Donc,
try
voilà.
to impress people or make
Oui,
feel
voilà,
against something or subvert something.
Comme moi j'ai une foi énorme dans le cinéma.
I really believe in cinema.
Et il faut que le cinéma m'émeuve et m'apprenne quelque chose. Si ça ne m'émeut pas, si ça ne m'apprend pas quelque chose sur l'âme humaine, je vois pas trop à quoi ça sert.
Cinema has to move me and it has to teach me something about the human soul. That's the use of it.
Je serai jamais plus profond que là.
I will never be that profound again.
So, Jake, I have to ask you, what's Jacques Audiard like to work with? Pretend he's not here.
I'm sorry, it's just you're such a performer. That's the thing. It's so funny. What's it? The duo. I'll never be that profound again. What's it like? I mean, look,
C'est vrai, on fait des choses pour que ce soit un petit peu sérieux. Le cinéma, ça sert à ça.
We do things because
course.
we want them to be serious.
Ça, on en a rien à foutre.
And if it's not serious, then we just don't care.
No, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, I think you lose anybody with one tone. I do think working with him for me was a difficult thing because I think that I've seen him from afar. I've watched his movies and I've been such a fan. And because I have seen his movies not in my language, because he is who he is and we don't travel in the same circles, because of all of that, I think I have admired him so much and admired his work so much that I had never walked on a set feeling that type of admiration for a filmmaker. And so it was difficult for me because I was ready to just not challenge a thing or ask a question. I was ready to sort of admittedly worship at the altar of a filmmaker who I love, you know? And what I discovered was that, that was helpful because I loved watching him just because I'm a fan. But what I was surprised by was the intellectual stimuli and sense of humor and the simplicity that he wants. I think constantly with performers, he would always say, essentially, you're doing too much. I mean, it's a constant with Jacques, and I think as performers we do that, and what he's looking for is a human simplicity, which is obviously full of complexity, but that there's a stillness that he wants, and I love that, because a lot of people think acting is supposed to be a whole lot more, and that's, I think, maybe why I love his films, is because the acting in them is just, there's a stillness at the center of each one of his characters, even if they're doing a ton. So working with him was intellectually stimulating. There was great food. His crew is amazing. I've never worked with a crew that is so invested in the story. Every single crew member was invested in the story, talking about it all the time, having conversations at dinner. We would go out when he wasn't even there, and everybody would try this character and talking about that character. Everybody was invested so deeply in the story. And also, you very rarely started too early, which was great. And I had a fantastic time. It was truly, truly a dream. I've checked it off my list. And I have literally 3 things on the list. And I won't tell you the other ones.
Ce qu'il y a de fou, c'est que comment Jake dit des choses, comment lui il travaille avec beaucoup de réalisateurs.
Jake works with a lot of different directors.
Et moi, je ne sais pas du tout comment ça se passe chez les autres.
And me, I have no idea how things happen with the other directors.
Ils sont aussi chiants que ça?
Are they as painful as it sounds?
No, I think that most directors just suck. I think that I was surprised by was we would talk about scenes, and because my character in particular was not really written in the book, and because I think he was constantly a discovery.
And we were rewriting a lot.
And writing a lot, yeah. I mean, and weirdly, I think it worked well because he was the writer. And I think there was an interesting irony in that process. But I would constantly bring up ideas with Jacques, and it was interesting how often we agreed. You know, I would never bring an idea to him that I hadn't thought would be respectful to the story. You know, and he always listened. I mean, literally would say, bring me a chair, and then I would sit down with him in the middle of wherever it was, and we would sit and talk. We would sit. We would never talk in a place where he didn't stop and sit and listen, and then he'd listen, and then he'd say, I have to go. And then he would tell me, we rewrote the scene, you know? And it was a really, really beautiful process. And I have to say also, the other actors are just this incredible group, you know? It was like this magical thing in the middle of Spain, mostly. You know, we're just sitting there watching like Joaquin feed grass to a horse and John C. Reilly like whittle a stick with a knife on a rock, and like Riz Ahmed like jump into a river, you know, half naked. You know, it was weird, but it was incredible.
I think we have some time for some audience Q&A.
Hi, congratulations on the film. My question's for Jake. So this Western really sticks out to me because of its lack of focus on machismo and more of these characters' search for humanity. How do you feel that plays into your character and his relationship with Riz Ahmed?
Well, we talked about that a lot, and I think at one point there was a scene between me and Riz where the realization was that it wasn't just about these men discovering their masculinity, but also the men before them and their fathers. That there's a real shadow, a real ghost of each one of their fathers in the midst of this story. And I think what is really interesting is this sort of profound search for what it is to be a man when there are so few models outside of convention. And I think convention can be tremendously destructive and misleading. And I think that was the idea, and I can't really speak to it except to say that Morris was a character that had many incarnations in many drafts before I even came in. You know, he was like, and his relationship with Worm is, there's that look that they look at each other that you cut for, like, feels like an eternity when Worm looks at Morris in that moment. And you rarely see another man look at another man like that, you know, without having like some sort of homoeroticism to it. And maybe there was, maybe there wasn't, but you rarely see an intimacy and a love where you go like, I'm looking at you, I love you, right? and it's minus the sexuality, you know? And maybe it isn't, I don't know, but that wasn't in this movie, but that wasn't the concern necessarily. The intimacy was very important, and it's an amazing moment that you see. And then ultimately their love when he says, "You were my best friend," and it's actually John's character, you know, that he says it to. It's beautiful. I mean, there are so many beautiful moments of a sort of unexplored sense of masculinity in cinema, I would say.
One part I found interesting was when they reveal that the chemical they're dumping into the lake is toxic and ultimately destroys the characters or at least irreversibly damages them. Do you feel like there's some sort of like environmental message in that?
Je crains que oui.
I'm afraid, yes. I'm afraid there is a message there.
En tout cas, si je vous disais par exemple non, pas du tout.
But if I were to say no,
Non,
not
pas
at
du
all,
tout. Vous ne me croiriez pas.
you would not believe me. So there
Donc
is
oui,
one.
je pense. Oui.
Yes, I believe there is one.
Okay, I have a question about Jake's character, and you said that he wasn't in the book. So what did you guys, all three of you, feel this movie and the story needed in this character, and how do you think his character pays off in the story towards the two brothers?
Well, we needed to develop the character, the two Warm and Maurice, to create a tension. In the book, it's really about the brothers and they're wandering around, and it's a lot of inner thoughts from Eli, and it's really a book that is written at the first person, and we needed to create that tension. So in order to do that, we needed to have to develop the other couple, and but we wrote so many things about Maurice, John Maurice. We had so much backstory about him, that he was working on a circus at one point. You remember that? We had so much, and he was. I mean, we always saw him as a guy coming from. Yeah, there was a scene that got cut that I really liked. Yeah, and the movie that actually was the first scene with him. He was writing to and refusing the heritage from his the heritage, his father's money. Yeah, exactly. And I always regretted that scene, says Jack. But it was too long, and it's like that. But yes, the character will open like that. There was a lot of backstory on him, and he's a mysterious character. But the thing we wanted at one moment, in the middle of a conversation, he will have a realization. He will understand something about himself, and that's what happened when he understands that he's 35 years old and his life is like an empty barrel. And it's exactly that thing. We wanted that to, because that's what Warm brings. Warm is the modernity. He brings the socialist utopia. He brings the formula, and he's a chemist. And at the same time, he brings psychoanalysis. He brings all that modernity in, and he can change the feelings of people. So his formula is a revelator, but actually he is the revelator. He will reveal all the other characters. Yeah, I should work in films. Should get into the industry.
Hi, this is a question for all three of you. I like how each one of these characters kind of has this want that's driving them. I think for Jake's character, it could be adventure, Riz Ahmed's perhaps this utopia, and John C. Reilly maybe love. And I was wondering what that want that's driving Joaquin Phoenix's character is, and if he gets it by the end of the film.
Pour Charlie, c'est comment c'est. Il y a une dimension assez importante quand même dans le film et dans le roman, c'est que c'est comment c'est un récit d'initiation.
It's a coming of age story actually,
et donc comment je pense que Charlie va simplement il va apprendre une chose, c'est déjà ce que c'est que le mal. Il a fait le mal.
He will learn one thing: is what is evil. And that he has been evil.
Et qu'il en est fortement puni.
And he's punished.
Et que c'est ça. Et après, moi je pense que dans s'il y a un au-delà du film,
but if there's something beyond the film,
c'est que ce qui s'est passé autour de la rivière, pas l'or, mais cette idée d'une utopie, de toute façon, va rester chez les frères.
So if there's something that happens beyond the film, it's that everything that happened at the river, when they're together at the river, not the gold, but the thing that happened in between those four characters, it will stay within the brothers.
Et je pense que les utopies mettent très très longtemps à se réaliser dans leur forme la plus pratique, c'est minimale peut-être, mais ça met du temps à se réaliser.
So it takes a long time for utopia to becomes reality, and sometimes
Pour redevenir une idée simple, l'idée de la modernité tout simplement.
But the utopia that one brings is the idea of modernity. It's really that, the utopia.
Mais en même temps, c'est une comédie. Hein.
But it's a comedy also.
There has been a retrospective at the MoMA.
Vous avez vu cette œuvre un peu?
Yes.
Yeah, you've seen that,
Yes.
that piece of art?
I enjoyed it a lot.
Merci madame, excusez-moi, je peux pas
I could see that, you know, in some of your movies, you end your movies on hope and relief in a way. I love the way it ends with the shot, you know, of him like sleeping or dozing, you know, eventually home. And I wanted to know if it's like an aim of your cinema to go that way, on hope and relief, and to end your movies this way. And then to Jake, which is your favorite movie by Audiard?
Il sait, oh fuck.
Oh, I'm supposed to answer first? No.
You need to think.
J'essaierai de faire quelque chose derrière.
My favorite movie is The Babysitter's Club. But
I think she meant what's your favorite genre?
right, I have. Oh, right. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Right.
That guy.
It's my favorite movie. I think probably the Beat My Heart skit, but I think probably A Prophet is my favorite. But I would say that I don't really have a favorite. I would say the ones that I've been was introduced to Jacques, to his work, and slowly as what was interesting about being on the jury at Cannes, watching Deepam, for instance, was being able to see it amongst so many other films, see his work amongst so many other filmmakers. It was really funny because when he won Best Director at Venice this year for this film, someone told me, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, he is the best director in Venice. I don't understand. Yeah, I mean, he was going to win it anyway, right? I mean, he just walked in and they just handed it to him. But I like him, by the way, if you can't tell. I'm a fan of his. But I think sometimes it's not only the whole film. Sometimes it's just watching somebody with a sure hand that sees the world in a way, and it's not necessarily even the entire film. It's all of the work sewn together in pieces of different quilts of someone who you love how they sew. I don't really have a favorite. I have moments that I've been like literally the breath's been taken out of my lungs watching sequences that he has put together, and makes me feel like I feel comforted to be alive. You know, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not as crazy as I thought I was. Or sometimes I think I'm probably really crazy when I watch his movies. But I don't think it's one. Sorry.
Merci. Je dois dire quoi, pardon? Je sais pas si je pourrais répondre comme ça exact. Mais ça c'est en tant que scénariste, réalisateur et éventuellement spectateur.
Like a screenwriter, as a screenwriter, director, and also as an audience.
C'est qu'en fait, je n'aime pas les fins tragiques.
I don't like tragic endings.
Je trouve que c'est toujours une facilité. C'est
So
comme dans la vie.
It's too easy. It's like like with life. It's too easy.
Voilà, c'est toujours plus difficile de se lever le matin en disant yes, ça va être formidable.
Yeah, it's more difficult to wake up in the morning saying yeah, wow,
Alors qu'on
let's
a
go.
Vous voyez ce que je veux dire? Oui, d'une certaine façon, mais comment
Yeah, I think you're right in a way, but
c'est ce que je disais c'est ce que je répondais tout à l'heure, c'est que comment je crois que de toute façon, même si ça a été un échec, l'idée d'autre chose reste dans le personnage. Et je pense que le spectateur le sait.
Even though the utopia was a failure, I think the idea of something different can exist. I think that will live within the brothers.
Après,
After that,
ils retournent chez leur
they
mère
go back to their mother's home.
et vous aurez noté qu'il n'y a plus de père.
And you've noticed that the father's gone. There's no more father there.
Ben voilà,
And that's the thing.
c'est peut-être une façon d'en finir avec la brutalité,
Maybe
avec la
that's the
violence.
way to end up with the brutality of our fathers. Is you can go back home once they're gone. Ouais. Okay.
Okay,
Voilà,
super,
let's not
he's
fuss on
super
that.
hopeful.
Ben, j'ai plus confiance dans les mères que dans les pères. Voilà.
I put my trust in mothers much more than in fathers.
J'ai vraiment le fils à sa mère, quoi.
Really, my mommy's boy.
J'ai un peu honte de le dire en public.
Yeah, I'm a little ashamed to say that in public, but that's just the way I am.
Well, thank you.
Maman!
Oh,
Mama. She's waiting for us. We're gonna have to go, guys.
thank you so much, guys.
Merci.